So looking back on that, I realized just how thoroughly my parents prepared me for adulthood. And not really like in the sense of like how to do taxes or how to change the oil in cars, which is not really relevant anymore, but in a deeper sense. They gave me the tools to build a meaningful life, really filled with purpose and self-confidence. I think for everyone here, you knew my parents. They were really passionate people. Anyone who spent even 5 minutes with them knew how much they cared about the things that they cared about, how much they cared about the people that they cared about, how intentional they were with their life. For my mom, her passions really showed up with Italian culture. It's music, it's food, it's history, the people there. When she passed, I showed up and there were a dozen people I had never met before. None of them spoke a word of English. And they're all people they had met on their travels there. For people in her circle, if she heard that you were going to Italy, she would make a little travel guide that had, little bits of dialect about how to order coffee or which alleys to go walk down or, all the highlights, the iconic dishes, things like that. And every time that they went themselves, they would come back with a new mandolin or some new tchotchke for the house, and that was always super meaningful. And for my dad, his passion showed up in his art, his printmaking. His had this incredible spatial intelligence and curiosity. I still remember when we first got internet at our house and we got our first inkjet printer, he would print off like literally every article he could find about printmaking techniques or cooking techniques. And we were just going through the house and finding, binders and binders of just like the entire internet from 1997 printed out in folders. And he loved that kind of stuff, just poring over to learn about things. And then for my mom and dad together, they love food and cooking. They loved hosting dinner parties. I remember when my mom turned 50, we spent like the whole week leading up to it, like rolling spring rolls and putting little toothpicks in the garnishes. And when I went to school, I always had the best homemade lunches. And when we were at home, we would spend the whole dinner talking about what we're going to have dinner tomorrow. I don't have all the same passions specifically as my parents, but maybe with the exception of food. But I think that approach to life is something I really do carry forward. I care really deeply about the things that I love, and I've come to believe because of them that the meaning of life isn't in the big grand gestures, but it's in the small details. It's the flour on your hands after pressing orecchiette all day. It's the tools in your hand when you're making something for someone that you love. It's about sharing with other people and going into deep conversations with others. I think my parents also really taught me about how to care about other people. They would so easily turn strangers into friends, no matter who they were, especially if they spoke Italian. Looking like at the diversity of people in this room, I think that's really a reflection of the way they treated other people. And I think no more so than their marriage as an embodiment of this. They were two people born literally on the opposite sides of the planet from each other. Somehow they found each other and fell in love. And I think that connection doesn't happen unless you're really open to other people and you really believe that everyone has something valuable and interesting story to tell. And for me, being around my parents, I always felt like the most important person in the world because I think I was to them. And I think watching their marriage too, really showed me how to put love above every conflict. Whenever my parents would have an argument, my mom would always end the argument the same way by sometimes yelling, "Life is short." And I think that has particular meaning today, but she would always say, "Life is short." And I think now I'm thinking about them, it gives me a little bit of comfort because they really took advantage of every moment that they had here. So the deepness of their love for each other, that's been my North Star when I think about my marriage with Stephanie. The way they deeply loved me is my North Star when I think about my children. I only see Gaia right now, but I hear her. And then when I think about how they raised me, what comes to the fore is really their selflessness for me. They're always willing to go out of their way to support me, to nurture my passions. And they drove me all the way across town to go to a slightly better middle school. They put up with my procrastination to help me with homework late until the night. They made space for every kind of strange little passion that I picked up. I've been cleaning out my parents' house for the last couple of weeks and finding like all these memories of the way they really nurtured my passion. I found my dad hand engraved Pog Slammers, for those of you who remember those little like chips. I found like a whole box of wooden dinosaur skeletons. I found the souvenirs from our trip to the East Coast when we visited Civil War battlefields after I like somehow became obsessed with the Civil War in 4th grade. I found fencing gear, I found kickboxing hand wraps, I found a Clinton Gore 1992 bumper sticker. My mom and I went around the whole neighborhood selling them to our neighbors, and then afterwards, for the next few weeks until the election, we would drive around and look at all the bumper stickers that we had sold our neighbors. So yeah, I think that's who they were. Some of the most formative conversations in my life were with my mom. You know, quite literally talking about the meaning of life. She helped me appreciate the world around me, and she instilled a sense of public engagement in me. And we would watch the election results late into the night every election year. The way she saw other people, not just noticing them, but really seeing them. She could sense other people's emotions and their talents, you know, oftentimes before they could. She believed that everyone was special and interesting, and I think because of that, a lot of people believed in themselves too, and I certainly believed in myself. She was a lifelong teacher, just like her own parents, my grandparents. And I think from an early age that probably the proudest I ever made her was when I got into teaching too. And so for her, and now for me, I think teaching is so much of how I think about the legacy that she left. You know, it's not just, you know, a way to understand something better, but, you know, she helped instill knowledge and the love of knowledge building in so many people, including me. And that really was so much of the purpose that she built around that I carry too. My dad, you know, when I think about him, he really taught me about hard work. You know, he was one of the hardest working people. He would stay up, you know, all through the night working on our projects. You know, he showed me that anything worth doing is worth doing with care. He wouldn't suffer sloppiness in anything that he did or that I did or my mom did. And you know, there would be at some times, you know, we'd be upstairs in the house and one of us would notice something wasn't working right. Like I think about the time we got the new kitchen cabinets, and you know, we couldn't reach the sauce bottles in the back without having to take everything out. And you know, if you do Chinese cooking, you need those sauces right away, otherwise everything's burning. And so, you know, the next day we show up and in the kitchen cabinet is a sliding drawer, and now you can get everything super fast. So, you know, he understood like that, those kinds of things. He took the initiative. He could fix anything, and he made everything himself. You know, also going through the house, I found all of my handmade Halloween costumes. Pirate, Napoleon. The Napoleon costume had a Clinton Gore 92 button on it. Paleontologist, Matador, it was Hanuman, the monkey god. And he was just, you know, the most creative person that I've ever encountered. But I think also when I think about my dad, like one thing I've really come to appreciate lately is that he was my male role model, and he showed me, you know, how to really lean into emotions and to feel things. He really believed in big gestures like homemade gifts and love letters. I found the whole box of the love letters. And he wasn't afraid to be emotional, and you know, especially when it came to me and my mom. And that's something that I just really appreciate now. I realize, you know, a lot of you know, boys growing up to be men don't have that kind of role model. You know, my parents never missed an opportunity to tell me how proud they were of me. It really drove me crazy. You know, we would walk into a store and my dad would tell everyone where I went to college. But I do feel like I'm part of their legacy, and now, you know, as a parent raising 2 young kids, I understand a lot more of where that came from. And you know, as a parent, I do feel their presence really, really closely. You know, I feel them here. And when I sing songs to my girls, it's like the songs my mom sang me, and you know, I only like am realizing now like these songs are ones that are ingrained in me because of her. And, you know, when I'm fixing things around the house, or you know, there's something that needs like to be rearranged, like I feel like my dad's presence there with his intuitive hands there. When I cook something, it's like literally using their cooking tools that they gifted me, and nurturing the family that way. And so when I think about what I want to pass on to my children from my parents' legacy, it's really those values. It's that passion for life. They gave me so much to carry forward. So all I can say is just thank you to them. My heart's with you forever, day and night.